Have you ever felt like your prayers are just hitting the ceiling? Like you're speaking into an empty room and the silence that comes back is deafening? If so, you're not alone. Let me tell you a story about a man named Theophilus. It wasn't that Theo stopped praying. He just stopped expecting answers. Every single morning, before the city fully woke up, he knelt beside his bed. He spoke the same words, shed the same tears, and was met with the same profound silence. Weeks turned into months, and months quietly stretched into years. He prayed for his mother's healing from a long illness. He prayed for a clear direction in his life. He prayed for relief from the heavy weight that seemed permanently settled in his chest. Yet, heaven felt closed, locked, and distant. Theo was a man who knew the scriptures. He could quote them with ease. Ask, and it shall be given to you. Call upon me, and I will answer you. But those powerful verses now felt like faint echoes from a place he couldn't reach through. But painfully inaccessible. They felt like promises for someone else. One night, after another long, draining day, Theo did something he had never done before. He didn't kneel. He didn't fold his hands in the familiar, reverent way. He just sat on the edge of his bed, exhausted, and spoke with raw honesty. God, I don't feel heard. The words hung in the air, frightening him with their bluntness, but they also felt strangely freeing. He wasn't angry anymore, just tired. So, incredibly tired of believing without seeing. Tired of hoping without any clarity. Tired of praying into what felt like an empty, indifferent sky. A few days later, the news he dreaded finally arrived. His mother's condition had worsened. The doctors were gentle and careful with their words, but their meaning was unmistakable. There would be no miracle, this time not the kind he had spent years begging for. As he sat beside her hospital bed, the soft, steady hum of the machines a constant reminder of their grim reality, his faith felt fragile, almost embarrassed to still exist. What was the point of all that praying? But in that moment of near despair, something unexpected happened. His mother reached for his hand. Her grip was weak, but it was intentional. She looked at him and smiled, not a forced, pained smile, but one filled with a peace that defied the circumstances. Theo, she whispered, her voice barely audible, don't stop trusting God. He wanted to protest. He wanted to scream. How could she say that, now of all times? But, before a single word could escape his lips, she continued. I prayed for healing too, she said softly. But God gave me something else. He gave me peace. And he gave me you, in that quiet hospital room. A profound realization hit Theo. It was unsettling, and it shook the very foundations of his faith. God had been answering all along, just not in the way he had demanded. His prayers weren't being ignored. They were being answered in a language he hadn't learned to understand. He had been so focused on the one answer he wanted that he had missed all the others. The weeks that followed her passing were excruciating. Grief came in relentless waves, pulling him under. The silence still lingered in his prayer time. But it was no longer an empty, hollow silence. It was different. It felt full. Instead of demanding that God explain everything, Theo began asking him to simply walk with him through the pain. Slowly, almost without him noticing, his prayers began to change. He stopped praying only for specific outcomes and started praying for strength to endure whatever came his way. He stopped asking when and started focusing on trusting who. He stopped measuring God's faithfulness by visible, tangible results and started seeing it in the quiet strength that got him through each day. One evening, while reading through his mother's old, well-worn Bible, a verse seemed to lift off the page. For my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. For the very first time, that verse didn't feel like a dismissal. It felt like a comfort. It felt like an embrace. Theo finally understood. Unanswered prayers are not unanswered love. Silence does not mean absence. And a delay does not mean a denial. Sometimes, the most powerful answer God gives is not to change our circumstances, but to reshape our hearts to be able to handle them. Years later, Theo would tell his story to anyone who felt lost in the silence. He wouldn't tell it as someone who, magically, received everything he ever prayed for. He told it as someone who learned to trust God even when heaven was quiet. And that trust, forged in the fire of unanswered prayer, became his greatest testimony. Because here is the truth. Faith is unproven when our prayers are answered quickly and exactly as we hoped. True faith is revealed in the waiting. It's revealed when prayers seem to go unanswered. When the silence is long and the night is dark, and we still choose to believe. We still choose to trust. So if you are in a season right now where God feels distant, where your prayers feel weak and the silence feels overwhelming, please remember Theo's story. Remember baptême, oh, here's your every word is working in ways far beyond what you can see. He is weaving a story that is bigger than your current chapter. And when the answer finally comes, whether it is in this life or the next, you will look back and realize he was never silent. He never stopped listening. He was with you all along. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing for more content that encourages and uplifts. And Tiam, all don't do up.